My fellow Americans, I'm pleased to tell you today that I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.
It is essential that our team learns to work with our new recruit, not against him.
I'm a geek, walking down the street.
Check the computer.
The mainframe computer. I access the mainframe.
At the end of this day, one shall stand, one shall fall. Time to find out.
Welcome to Basically a Geek Show. Here are your hosts, Mike and Jack.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 29 of Basically a Geek Show. This is Mike. With me, as always, is Jack.
I'm not as think as you drunk I am.
And we've kind of got a grab bag episode today. I guess we're going to start off with Mike talks about things he's watched. Okay,
can you do me a big favor? Never refer to yourself in the third person again.
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is this past week, I saw the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle film. I know you gave your review, but now that I've seen it, I figured we could have a kind of back and forth discussion, more or less.
Okay.
You said that it wasn't bad, but you were hesitant to call you did not call it good.
Yeah, it just kind of, to me, just kind of languished in its own mediocrity. I mean, it did enough good to where there was no instance of like, oh my god, this is horrible. But there was, I don't know, there was enough bad to be like, really? What? So, yeah, you know.
Now,
it just was kind of there.
Now, I came out of it, honestly, my honest opinion was, that wasn't that bad, honestly. Like, I'd even call it good.
Were you on narcotics?
No, I was not. I wouldn't call it great. I'd call it good, though. Granted, I was never the Ninja Turtles were never really my franchise of choice as a kid. I don't have quite the same attachment to them as I know you do, and as I know some others. But I watched it enough to know the basic premise. I watched the first 2 live-action films that Jim Henson worked on. So I know enough about the Turtles to know what a Turtle movie should look like. And to me, I guess, especially with the rumors leading up that the Turtles were going to be aliens or Shredder was going to be a white guy, given everything that we had heard and suspected, that seemed like an outright betrayal of the concept of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I went in, I saw a movie that stayed more or less very true to the story, true to the key character elements, and I came out thinking, that was not nearly as much of a betrayal as I was expecting it to be.
Well, the thing is, okay, have we reached that point where we consider something to be good merely because it does not shit on our soul? I mean, is the fact that they don't...
Iron Man 3 did terrible, terrible things to me, sir.
Right, I know exactly, but I'm just saying, have we reached that point? Have we suffered through so many shit-ass movie adaptations of, old franchises and everything that we've gotten to a juncture where if something doesn't fuck up nearly as much as it could have fucked up, do we consider that a victory? Are we at that point? Because that kind of sounds like what you're saying.
Perhaps we are at that point. Perhaps we are at that point. Again, the fact that, Shredder was actually Shredder and not like Ian Anderson or something, kind of just, I was like, it's nice when movies get iconic villains right. And, yeah, so I guess it's kind of that, but my general feeling coming out of it was, for a live-action adaptation of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that was probably pretty good. Not great, but, all the key points that had to be hit were hit. All the major characters that had to be featured were featured. I will agree with you, they royally screwed up Raph at the end.
Yeah.
And if Raph is your favorite character, as I know he is in your case, Jack, I could understand how that would perhaps sour someone to the film overall. Definitely understand that. And again, maybe this goes back to me not being as familiar with the Turtles as some other people, but I don't remember Mikey ever being that annoying. Like, I know he's always been like the party guy, hyper, character, but I've never, in no other incarnation of TMNT, have I seen Mikey and just wanted to like punch his face out of existence like I did in this movie.
And yeah, no, that's one of the things that they got wrong. I mean, Michelangelo in this movie is kind of just a parody of himself, I guess you would say. I mean, in the first Jim Henson movie, I mean, he was funny, but he wasn't quite so over the top that you just kind of loathed him. And in this movie, he's just a fucking retard. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. He's just so annoying, and I don't. Yeah, it's a. They tried to get it. If they just toned it down a bit, or hey, here's a thought, written it better, it would have been great. It would have been fine. Minus the fact that he looked like a fucking warmed over turd mixed with a fucking breakfast burrito.
I'm gonna get to the special effects in a bit. I still want to talk a bit more about characters. Leonardo, at first, I thought, well, they never really did much with Leonardo. He was kind of boring until I realized that Leonardo is always boring. So
yeah. By nature, he's pretty boring. He's like, his whole shtick is, I'm the leader.
And he's like the leader for legitimately good reasons because he's a legitimately good guy, and that's awesome, but it also makes him not very exciting.
Yeah, he was Green Jesus before we had Thrall.
No. I never quite wanted to see Leonardo die, whereas I'm actively rooting I'm actively rooting for Sargeras to take a shit and just have it land on Thrall in Warlords of Draenor. But that's neither here nor there. Moving on, though, so Leonardo, boring, but that's pretty much, that's accurate to the source material. So again, if you're a Turtle fan, I don't see how you could necessarily complain about Leonardo's characterization. As boring as it seemed on target. Donatello, I thought they did a really good job. I mean, anytime, Donatello's whole thing is that he's a nerd. And anytime Hollywood tries to write what a nerd is, it tends to not be super accurate or good. But as far as a Hollywood conception of what a nerd is, I thought it was fine. He seemed unoffensive. I didn't mind him at all. Maybe it's because Michelangelo was standing there most of the time, and he kind of just was like a lightning rod for all of my frustration.
Yeah, but it's a sliding scale, really. I mean, you got to grade it on a curve.
But Donatello, the characterization seemed fine, and I thought he looked goofy with his glasses, but in a good goofy way. But Splinter is the one I really want to talk about, because Splinter, I thought they fucking nailed.
They did.
Splinter, especially the show-off when spoilers, when the Foot Clan show up. To the Turtles base in the sewers.
Was it really the Foot Clan, or was it like the Montana militia?
They said it was the Foot Clan, but it looked a lot like far right-wing Montana militia. It really was. It was an interesting look for a clan that's traditionally described as a clan of ninjas and assassins. But the Foot Clan invades their base, and Shredder and Splinter have a face-off. And Shredder eventually does get the better of Splinter, but Splinter holds his own quite well. I think at one point he's like just nonchalantly holding him off with a katana with one hand, which which the way that it was shot looked pretty cool. And you really kind of like when he's kind of saying his lines of that scene, and he's expressing his concern over the Turtles and their well-being. It really felt genuine, and I guess the props go to the voice actor in that case, because I thought that Splinter's characterization was spot on, like perfectly nailed.
Yeah, the acting behind Splinter, the way he was written and everything, that was all fine. That was great. Of course, even the previous movie, the live action Jim Henson movie, it did a good job of Splinter too. This one had a more proactive version of Splinter, which I liked better actually in that regard. And I discussed that last week. Mm-hmm. It was the visual of Splinter that I was like, well,
let's talk about the CGI. And I can definitely understand why a lot of people are not super happy with the way the Turtles look, the way Splinter looks. But part of me is thinking, you know, at the end of the day, the character of Splinter is a rat man. At the end of the day, the Turtles are giant turtles with human-like qualities in their physiology. And people are complaining that, the CGI for Splinter and the Turtles look ugly. I'm thinking, well, you know, maybe if these things actually existed in our world, in a live action, like in a real world, they would look creepy, and maybe the CGI is actually on point to a degree.
Well, the thing is, okay, it may be, but it may. I mean, that's one of those things we really can't prove or disprove one way or the other, of course. At least until we find what they have at Roswell. But it's one of those things where, okay, another case of someone making a movie and they don't stop to think about what they should do. They're only concerned with what they could do. And there seems to be this obsession now on both ends, on the filmmaking end and on the movie going end, with realism being applied to very unrealistic out there ideas. Mm-hmm. Like someone bitching that, you know, the Godzilla movie was completely implausible. Have you ever seen one? And it's the same kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, I mean, and some of the designs in the Transformers live action series, quote unquote live action, suffered from the same thing, this need to make them as realistic as possible, and they suffer aesthetics that would otherwise make them more appealing. And let's use the medium for what it can do, which is make things that aren't real. And in doing so, you don't have to stop and actually imagine to yourself, okay, well, you know, down to, you know, a biological level, a scientific level, what something would look like. Mm-hmm. Let's try to keep, I mean, the original designs, even in the early 90s movie, at least in the first two of them, more so the very first one. The second one was kind of meh, but those were fine. They were, quote unquote, realistic enough. And they stayed pretty true to, you know, the comic book designs and the cartoon designs without making them look like fucking chuds. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what they look like. They look like fucking chuds.
I wouldn't say they look like chuds. I wouldn't go that far.
Well, were you on narcotics? Did you see this? Did you see the one from 2007?
No!
Is that what you've seen? Because that was actually good.
No, that one actually pissed me off because there was no Shredder. To me, Shredder is like the turtle villain, and if you're not going to have Shredder in your movie, then like I don't kind of see the point. Unless you drag Krang out, in which case, you know, let's party on with Krang. But you know, again, like they try in the 2007 CGI movie. They tried to kind of invent all new enemies for the Turtles to fight, and it really, I don't know, to me it didn't work. To me, I was like, I just kept going, like, the Foot Clan's here? Where the hell is Shredder? Shredder should be here.
If they do make a sequel to this movie, and they do have Krang, I'll be honest with you, I don't give a shit what they do with it. Because, I mean, it's quite obvious that to me it is, that they cannot use the cartoon design or anything close to it because that just looked butt-fuck retarded. Now, which means that they probably will use it.
Now, Krang, I think, is going to come back. I was reading something of what I was reading some of the remarks that the director and the producers for this movie said regarding a sequel, and, you know, despite its negative rap it's getting, it has more than made its money back at the box office, so a sequel is going to happen. And regarding the sequel, they were talking a lot about they wanted to work Dimension X into things, so I've got to think that Krang is going to show up. But I agree, like, Krang himself, like the pink blob thing, that's whatever. If they want to use that as the basis for a Krang design, go have at it. But it's that robot design that he, bumped around in that original cartoon. What the hell was... he designed that. He settled on that look.
Yeah. He sat down and he designed himself a robotic body that is essentially emulating a fat, bald man in Speedos.
Mm-hmm. It looked like a fat, bald, mentally challenged Hulk Hogan.
Actually, yeah. with like really retarded, like, 80s sunglasses or what the fuck ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, I don't know. And Krang, Krang's whatever. I got nothing against Krang. If he's going to be in the sequels, so be it. But I really liked Shredder. And again, a lot of people went on about the design seeming Megatron-y, and I could certainly see that. And Michael Bay being attached to this film certainly is going to add that perception. But at this, I had my first major concern from the trailers was that Shredder's armor would just sort of be materializing knives out of nowhere. But once you see it in action in the movie, it's what you were saying last week, Jack. You really do see that it's kind of got this boomerang capability built into the knives that he can fan them out and shoot them at enemies and then they come back.
Which to me is almost more ridiculous than if it spawned knives out of nowhere.
Now, see, I don't mind that so much because, once we get into the realm of mutated turtles, practicing martial arts, at that point, science fiction has firmly been established. We are firmly in a science fiction movie. And at that point, you can make up whatever, bullshit technology you want as long as it's utilized properly. And I thought it was utilized well enough that they made it clear that his armor wasn't just sprouting knives out of thin air, that the weaponry of Shredder's suit was sufficiently explained in a way that I didn't think it would have been going in. So I was happy to see that. And I actually kind of liked the design of the Shredder armor when, in the rare moments where the camera would slow down to actually let us look at it. The fight scenes, as you said last week, were very fast.
Yeah. And
even though Michael Bay wasn't directing, you perhaps think maybe that's a bit of his influence with the fast cuts during the fight scenes. And so whenever Shredder is on screen in his armor, it's kind of hard to focus on him because it's constantly moving. But the few shots where they actually do let the camera rest on him long enough, and I actually got a good look at his armor, I really liked it. Because from what I saw, at least, it looked like it was traditional samurai armor that they had simply, fused robotics on top of. And I thought that was cool.
That's more or less it. Now, my thing about saying it would have been better if it had just seemingly, had however many knives or blades loaded into it and just shot them out, is that, if they made a slight modification to what he was shooting, make it look like something that would conceivably, boomerang back to you, even if it were just a shuriken or something like that, or some kind of, boomerang blade or anything that would conceivably come back to you, I would have been fine with it. But he's just shooting fucking Yoshi blades, and which will fuck you up, by the way. They don't lie when they say those things will cut anything. But, they just kind of come back, and they're just fucking knives. I mean,
was under the impression that there was some sort of magnetism involved in it.
I suppose.
Just the way that the visuals worked and the sound effects that they paired with it, it made it seem like there was magnetism, like he'd shoot the blades out and then he could activate the magnetic retrieval program.
Isn't that what you hammered me on Highlander 2 about? You shouldn't have to think that deep into the technology and thinking behind something if the movie's doing its job. Isn't that what you hammered me to death on that with?
I was talking about key plot points in Highlander 2. This is just Shredder's, suit. It's whatever.
Shredder fucking bitches up as a key plot point. It's what he does.
But yeah, no, and again, I'm happy to see that, the Shredder's origins were kept intact. They didn't make him they just didn't make him some pissed off, greedy white guy. I mean, the pissed off, greedy white guy was there, but he was more like Shredder's lackey.
I mean, I could have bought the pissed off greedy white guy doing it. I mean, I wouldn't have been super pissed. It would have been, for Shredder has always to me been more about the aesthetics than the actual character behind, because in the cartoon you never really got any characterization of Shredder.
Didn't they say he had some backstory with Splinter in the cartoon?
Yeah, he did. I forget exactly what it was. I think in the cartoon, actually, Shredder and Splinter had both been human at one point.
Yeah, like traditionally.
And Splinter got mutated into a rat, and they just kind of carried on the fight. And then, of course, the early 90s Ninja Turtle movie, Splinter had been a pet rat, had been some Japanese guy's pet rat, and they even did this scene of like this little Muppet rat. It was kind of cute, actually, and it was like mimicking these karate moves, and they even did like this noise.
That's actually accurate. In the original comics, Splinter wasn't human. He was a rat. He was a rat who was the pet of a karate master who was betrayed or backstabbed by Shredder. And then, like, he gets mutated and becomes Splinter.
And even in the original NES Ninja Turtles game, like at the end, I believe, when you beat the game, it's been so long since I've beaten it, it's kind of fuzzy, but they show Splinter mutating back into a human, and he looks like if you just like ran his face over with a rolling pin. And it's like, wow, God, limit yourself on sequels. Why don't you, Konami? Oh, wait, no, they didn't. That never happened. But so,
traditionally, I think in most of the Turtles adaptations, and again, someone who's more of a fan of the Turtles than I could probably clarify, but I think more often than not, Splinter is just a rat who is mutated. It's on the very rare occasion that he's actually a person who becomes a rat man.
Yeah, and I think that's almost easier to work with because it keeps a level of consistency, because it's like, well, the Turtles were just turtles and they got mutated into what they are, but Splinter was a human who got mutated. And I guess they did that to kind of explain, why Splinter knew so much about ninjutsu and whatnot.
I kind of liked the explanation in this movie, though, where he just finds like a book.
Self-help guides, yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, so I was raising the turtles, and then, like, I found some old book about ninjutsu in the sewer, and I studied it, and now I'm a ninja master.
Yeah, that was, I don't know, I thought that was actually kind of bad. Just because it's like, you may as well at that point have showed this mutated rat holding Ninjutsu for Dummies, a guide for the rest of us. I mean, the idea that you could teach yourself a martial art purely from a do-it-yourself book, it's just ludicrous.
But again, we're kind of, to me, I guess the whole thing is, it's not so much the journey as it is the final destination. The final destination is that we had Splinter training the Turtles to be martial arts masters, and that's kind of the point that they needed to get to, and they got there. So I guess, that was absurd, but it didn't really bother me all that much. It was just, And for the most part, again, as I said, I thought that they nailed Splinter perfectly when it came to his characterization. So,
in terms of personality and all that shit, yeah, they did. I mean, but they were just like, I just remember when I was watching it, what? He learned this from a fucking self-help book he found in a fucking sewer? Now, like, even if they'd elaborated on that and said, had something of him, as a rat, like, somehow obtaining more books that, rich people had thrown away or whatever, and had this library of information. I don't think
rich people routinely just toss books away in the sewers.
I don't know. Well, whatever. It's something, a pseudo rat man sneaking into the library at night or some shit. I don't know. Anything. Donatello, well, no, because he would have been, whatever. But or Splinter had learned enough about the internet while being in the lab to, hook up some rudimentary electricity in a fucking dial-up modem and read shit on Wiki. I don't know. Anything that would show a more vast library of martial arts knowledge at his disposal than, ninjutsu for dummies, more or less. I mean, even shows the book. And it's like something you'd get out of like a high school public library or high school library almost. Just like the fucking diagrams, and that's pretty much all it was. I mean, it's even a very thin book. I know I'm really picking it apart here. I know I'm getting kind of anal retentive with this, but it just kind of stuck with me when I was watching. I'm like, what the fuck? Really? Well, hell, give me that fucking book. Shit.
But,
Samurai Jack, yo.
I want to talk a bit about the lab thing, though. The big thing that I know is that traditionally April is not really involved in the backstory of the Turtles, and here they made the decision to kind of merge April's backstory with that of the Turtles. Again, I'm not someone who has that much of a history with the Turtles franchise, so even though I knew that wasn't how it usually went, I didn't feel like, betrayed me! But, I guess you'd be the person to ask, Jack. Did you feel like that was some sort of betrayal of the source material, or were you okay with it?
I was fine with it. I mean, it was interesting, and it was as good of a way as any to introduce April O'Neil into the story. And it was actually more creative than, it was more creative, and it worked out in a good way, as opposed to some of their other deviations. It worked fine, she was, the only thing that seemed a little bit dodgy to me about that was just like how she suddenly just out of the blue remembers, oh, hey, my dad is mutating shit in his lab. Oh, hey, they were fucking turtles. Oh, hey, these are fucking turtles. Oh my God.
I think the thing that clued her in was when they started referring to each other by names that she remembered. I mean, that's what I got out of it. That
yeah, I mean, I suppose so too, but I mean, you would think, I mean, I don't know. I mean, she was old enough to work a video camera. I would think she was old enough to have an idea, at least the gist of an idea of what was being done in the lab, perhaps. I don't know. Again, I might be reading too much into it. It just seemed like her recollection was selective, and suddenly, it was like, what? What is this? Oh my God, they're my pets. I remember you guys. And maybe it was the way they wrote it. Maybe they could have done a little bit better with the exposition. Almost how kind of like at the beginning of the movie, Shredder is all like, we're going to be what we once were, blah, blah, blah. And they never really explained like what the Foot Clan itself was.
I took that when his adopted son, the white guy, was explaining to April that story of feudal Japan, about how there was some great warlord and some great clan took over the land. Like, I kind of assumed he was telling the backstory of the Foot Clan, but the problem is, and this kind of goes back to my Highlander comparison, is like, at this point it's a major plot point, and they kind of just implied it. They didn't spell it out, and while you don't want them to spell everything out, the primary motivation for the villains should probably be made clear. And I don't think it was here. Like, again, Sax, that was the character's name. He's going on about this Japanese legend about this warlord, and I assumed that was the Foot Clan backstory, but it wasn't very clear.
Yeah, I mean, he never says that it was the Foot Clan. I mean, I got the impression it was just some random group. Mm-hmm. He never said, and they called themselves the Foot Clan, or anything like that. It was just kind of like, oh, hey, this was a thing that happened. And then next thing you know, you see Shredder, going on his rant about, oh, we're going to be awesome again, and it's going to be great, and we're going to kill people, and it'll be fun. It'll be just like the fucking good old days, guys. And there was never any kind of connection there, if that's, to me at least, if that's what they were trying to go with. I don't know. It just seemed like to me there was a bit of sloppy writing when it came to outline the actual plot itself in most places. In a lot of places, I don't know. It seemed kind of like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, when it's like you have two scripts for a movie and you kind of Frankenstein the fuckers together, and what you end up with, they a lot of times don't put the stitches in the right places. It's kind of what it felt like. They put stitches in the wrong places, and there were gaps that shouldn't have been there, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. But another thing I saw this past week was Guardians of the Galaxy. I finally got around to seeing it. It was just kind of one of those things where the timing just didn't line up, and then I finally was able to catch it. So,
and before you go into that, let's clarify our joint position. Oh, hey, I have tequila I didn't know about. Let's clarify our position on this. On this movie in general, going into it, and in case we have not made it obvious, we do not like the idea that this movie was made.
No, I don't. Guardians of the Galaxy has always kind of struck me as bottom of the barrel. The only Guardians of the Galaxy I ever read was for a brief point in time where Iron Man joined the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Marvel did that to actually get people to read Guardians of the Galaxy because no one gave a shit. Right.
And to me, my thing on this has been, to me, this reeks of this trend. I'm sure someone else has already used the term. I just haven't known of anyone else to. Fansploitation. This is a fansploitation movie. This is Marvel saying, hey, we're going to make this fucking movie. You're going to fucking watch it, and we're going to make money off of it because you know why? It has our fucking name on it. And we've got you all so suckered in spite of Iron Man 3 and some of the other crap we've crammed down your throat lately, that you're going to watch this fucking movie, you're going to fucking like it, and we're going to put out any goddamn thing we want because we're fucking Marvel, bitch.
When I heard that there was a Guardians of the Galaxy movie being made, I definitely thought, God damn it, Marvel, you're gonna water the whole goddamn thing down. You've gotten drunk off your success, and now you're just making movies based on whatever bullshit pops into your head.
They got drunk, now we have to get drunk to watch the shit that they made while drunk.
Sure, make like the fucking Mandarin, Ian Anderson, it'll be cool!
It was like the raccoon was real, man! But anyways, that being said, I just kind of wanted to clarify our position on this and why, cause I mean, we've done a lot of riffing on this movie before it's even come out, and we never really explained why. I don't think in any clear sense. But that being said, you've seen the movie. What were your impressions on it?
This movie's getting a lot of praise. And I definitely see where a lot of that praise comes from. It was most definitely a lot better than I expected. The fact that I actually enjoyed myself watching the movie should tell you how surprised I was in that regard. So,
and also how irritated you probably are about it.
I am, yes, irritated that I did like it. That being said, I think some of the praise is a bit over the top. You have people saying stuff like, it's the second best Marvel movie after Avengers. I've even heard some people say it's better than the Avengers. And it's
that's a hard pill to swallow. I mean, I haven't seen it, but that's a pretty hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, okay.
If you said it was better than Iron Man 3, okay, well, so is my cat shit. I mean, so yeah, I can buy that, but...
I mean, it's okay. I wouldn't put this in the top 3 Marvel movies. As far as I'm concerned, you've got the first Iron Man, you got Avengers, and you got Captain America 2. And however you want to...
Captain America 2?
I would put Captain America 2 up there, yes.
Oh, Blawsville.
I liked a lot of what they did. Most of it is atmospheric, in retrospect. Like the whole thing where... I still think Marvel's full of shit when they describe Captain America 2 as, it's a 70s thriller masquerading as a superhero film. No, it's a superhero film masquerading as a 70s political thriller. But I still appreciated the 70s political thriller atmosphere that they tried to inject into it.
Let's just cut down. Let's deviate just a little bit further here, and I'm going to say, putting Robert Redford in your fucking movie does not make it harken in any way, shape, form, or fashion to a 70s political thriller.
No, it wasn't.
Except you'll say, hey, it was that guy that was in all those political thrillers in the 70s. Oh, well, what's his shit? Yeah, that guy.
It wasn't just that. A lot of elements in just a lot of the story elements in general, and just kind of the atmosphere that they kind of built up with the relationship between Nick Fury and Captain America. I don't want to get too bogged down in a Captain America rant, but in terms of in the terms of Marvel Cinematic Universe, in terms of my top Marvel films, it's Avengers, the first Iron Man, Captain America 2, and however anyone wants to rank those three, it's generally good because there are pluses and minuses to all of them. And then I'd probably even round out the last two spots in the top 5 of the 2 Thor movies, which I thought were, or maybe one Thor movie, maybe the first Thor movie and then the first Captain America movie.
I would say, okay, if we're going to do the top Marvel films, number 1, the first Punisher.
No, I'm just talking about Marvel Cinematic Universe, though. Like, not everything Marvel's done.
Well, there's nothing that said that the Punisher is not in this universe. And
I have a feeling
if has the Marvel Pictures logo.
I have a feeling if asked, they would deny that it is.
Well, they haven't been. And until we get to ask someone who knows when we get the chance, then we'll, there's nothing saying that it's not. And besides, as far as I'm concerned, if it's got the Marvel logo on the front of it, it's fucking fair game.
Okay.
Unless there's something explicitly stating like, okay, the Hulk, when they, fucked that up, however many times they kept having to reboot it, okay, that's different. But everything else seems to be pretty much fair game. Ghost Rider 2 was brilliant.
Really?
No, not really. Not really. I just wanted to say that because I don't know. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So not in your top 3, not in your top 5, or would it be in your top 5? Your top?
I'd put it the highest. I'd rank Guardians of the Galaxy in terms of just the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I would put Guardians of the Galaxy the highest I put it is 5, and that's not damning praise or anything. It's still a very fun movie. I just don't think it's. I just think that maybe it's a case of lowered expectations where people were expecting to hate it and then it didn't suck. And then so people are like, oh, it's so good. I don't know. I don't have a problem with the film. I enjoyed it, had a good time at the theater, would recommend it on that basis alone. I just wouldn't say it's the best or second best Marvel film yet. But kind of getting back to the movie in its own right, how does it stand up on its own? It does a fairly good job. The main characters, again, this is actually kind of like an Avengers film, and in a lot of ways, in terms of filmmaking, would have actually been harder to make this than the Avengers, because with the Avengers, you had an ensemble cast, but each character got a movie or two before the Avengers to kind of flesh out, so they didn't have to spend a lot of time on backstory because everyone's backstory was established going in. With Guardians of the Galaxy, you've got, again, an ensemble cast, but everyone's backstory has really got to be touched on, and everyone's really got to be given a moment to shine. And for the most part, they did their job very, very well. You've got Ronan the Accuser, who is the main villain of the film. I think he accuses people of things. He's kind of like a member of the Krell Inquisition, the Krell being a Marvel alien race. He's a lesser known Marvel villain, but in terms of the overall Marvel universe, with Thanos and the Collector both make appearances in the film. This movie really delved into sort of the more cosmic, space, opera-esque Marvel villains. And that worked well for it. I've heard a lot of people describe it as Star Wars, and in terms of a plot, it's really not Star Wars-esque, but in terms of kind of...
It's probably better.
No. In terms of doing a good job exploring a galactic setting, I'd say this and Star Wars are about on par.
I gotta go back to this accuser thing, because whenever hearing the name of a villain, the nickname being the accuser, I see his places being like anywhere in the universe where there's like more than one person in a room and someone farts, he's like, this is my time to shine. It was you. Okay, that's all I have to say about that. But it just kept flashing in my head and I had to say it.
Well, the big thing that I think hurts this movie, its major mark I'd say that goes against it is that it's a bit too, I don't want to say self-referential, but it's a bit too glib for its own good. It gets a bit too cute. The humor can be a bit too winking at the camera-esque for my tastes. And I don't know. Again, my favorite series of superhero films are the Nolan Batman trilogy. And damn it, that was just a series of smart, well-written superhero films. And Marvel, to their credit, they're not trying to ape the Nolan trilogy. They're kind of trying to do their own thing with a bit more tongue-in-cheek, a bit more humor injected into them. But I don't know. It gets just a bit too self-indulgent when it comes to the humor at times. Just a bit. Again, nothing that's going to ruin the experience. But it would probably, if you ask me, Mike, what was the film's biggest problem, that would probably be it.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, go on.
And I just want to say again, I said that, yes, Thanos has a minor appearance. Thanos and his daughters get some expanded backstory, which is good because I think everyone's kind of figured it out that Thanos is going to get the Infinity Gauntlet, which again, this movie takes steps. They've been building up the Infinity Gauntlet since the Tesseract in the first Captain America film, and then there was the Ether in Thor 2. And then there's another Infinity Gem that's introduced here. So they've been building up the Infinity Gauntlet, and now they're going to start giving Thanos some time to be established for the general audience. And I think everyone sort of figured out that that Avengers 3 is going to be Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. And so they built him up. He's not the main villain, and I think he only really has one scene of any consequence in the film. But in terms of establishing him for the audience, it does a good job. Another big thing that stood out to me is I'm not sure, like, even though this does take place within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm not sure how they can effectively have the Guardians of the Galaxy, the full team, sort of join up with the Avengers. Because, again, we've got two ensemble casts, and the Avengers kind of hit that sweet spot where it came to the amount of characters being used and the amount of screen time each character could get. You start adding one or two more characters over that, and you're starting to reach that limit, and this is 5 right off the bat. So I don't think we're going to see a full Guardians of the Galaxy Avengers team up, if only because they can't make a 4-hour-long movie. But I do think we'll probably see Star-Lord or Rocket Raccoon or maybe even Groot. Maybe one combination of those three, as those three seem to be the most memorable. That had like the most connection to the audience. So I'd say one of those three. Any combination of those three, probably in pairs of 1 or 2, probably has a chance in an Avengers movie, but not the full cast. That would just be too many characters on screen at once. So let me ask you this. I think this is probably the main question that I would have about this movie, because going into this in the months that have been leading up to this thing being released, the reactions have been kind of varied. I heard,
I've seen a couple people on the internet saying, oh, well, it's cool that this is getting a movie and blah, blah, blah. And I just took it to be they were one of the, dozen people who'd actually heard of Guardians of the Galaxy. Mm-hmm. The rest of us were either like, why the fuck is this a thing? Or who the fuck are the Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah.
And so I think the main challenge that this movie would have faced going into it is, why should anyone give a flying fuck about this, about these characters, about, them? Mm-hmm. Does it succeed in doing that? Does it succeed in giving you a reason to give a shit and actually care and be that this movie was actually fucking made?
It does. It does. The movie starts off with the backstory of Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord. And it does a good job of sort of getting the audience to be sympathetic with him. They really do a good job making the audience care about Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord. And it's an interesting question because Earth is never actually threatened in this movie. The bad guy doesn't want to destroy Earth. He wants to destroy the headquarters of the Nova Corps. The Nova Corps being pretty much Marvel's answer to the Green Lantern Corps, as in they're basically space police. And so the bad guy wants to destroy their headquarters, and that's sort of the main. That's the plot in a nutshell. They have to stop him. So Earth isn't threatened. So maybe that could cause a bit of a disconnect, like, ooh, what the fuck? I don't give a fuck if a bunch of space cops get their headquarters blown up, whatever. But, again, it all kind of rests on Star-Lord, and they do a good job making the audience connect with him, and then thus you kind of care about the whole team. Rocket Raccoon is actually done very well, and actually gets a bit of a tearjerker of a scene at one point. And Groot is just Groot is just Groot. He just says his own name over and over again, but they do a strange, which kind of makes me surprised that they went out of their way to get Vin Diesel to play Groot, because God damn it, it's not like there was a lot there that you needed a recognizable voice actor for. He's got like 3 lines the entire movie.
Sounds like it's about pretty much up to par with Vin Diesel's acting capability.
I'm just saying, like, you could have gone like an intern or something and then just run his voice through through a processor to, fill out, to do Groot's role. There was no need to go out and get a recognizable name for that. But I'd say yes, it does a good job connecting, giving you a reason to care about 2 or 3 of the characters, and as a result, everyone else is sort of benefits by proxy from that. So,
well, I mean, I automatically care about the green chick.
She's actually one of the they don't do a good job. She's basically Thanos' daughter. And she's got daddy issues, so she betrays him and joins the good guys. And then there's Thrax, who is played by Dave Bautista of WWE fame, Bautista, as it were. And that was actually an inspired casting choice, because Bautista does not have the best range of acting abilities, but the character he plays is from a race that's entirely literal. So similes really kind of don't register with them. So his character is naturally very wooden. So it actually kind of works to Bautista's favor that they cast him like that. So, yeah, I mean, Bautista and Gamora, the green chick, they aren't. They probably have the least amount of connection to the audience. The other 3 definitely get more, but they greatly benefit from Rocket Raccoon and Star-Lord really kind of tugging at the audience's heartstrings at times.
So now, I mean, this movie's already made its money back. It's already made a profit. I mean, we discussed this last week. It's not performing It hasn't performed as well as, some of the other movies that have come out this summer. Go Godzilla. But I mean,
Transformers continues to like make all of the money in the world.
Yeah, basically. I mean, but so I mean, sequels going forward.
Yeah, I'm actually I don't know. On one hand, it's expected that a film that will probably be part of a series, that the first film will end with sequel bait. Like, nothing is truly standalone anymore. And in that regard, they definitely leave some sequel bait hanging at the end of the film. Basically, it's revealed. Well, Star-Lord's whole backstory is that he was abducted from Earth as a kid, and we know that his father left him. And then it's revealed at the end that he's only part human on his mother's side, and that his dad was an alien, and that they don't know what alien race his father was. It's like unknown to the space cop, so it's like, oh, holy shit, who's his dad? And so that's going to be interesting. And I have to say, having seen the movie, I wouldn't mind more Guardians of the Galaxy films, because Guardians of the Galaxy allows Marvel to explore the more intergalactic aspect of their fictional universe, whereas all the Avengers are more or less Earthbound. Every now and then Tony Stark gets on his super suit and flies into space for shiggles, but that's about it. So this really would allow Marvel to explore part of their mythos that the Avengers films can't really touch on. And again, I wouldn't expect a full Guardians of the Galaxy Avengers team up, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I wouldn't mind the Guardians of the Galaxy kind of keeping their distance from the Avengers more or less, and keep it in the same universe and have connections between the films. But I wouldn't mind it if the Guardians kind of were given some space to kind of grow on their own.
I gotcha.
And I really think that's what the value in this film is that it opens up such a wide array of story possibilities, just because they have this vast cosmic universe, this vast cosmic fictional universe that they could never really explore due to the earthbound nature. I mean, you kind of, Thor has Asgard, but Thor only ever really goes between, he only really goes between Earth and Asgard, and then he pops over to some other worlds now and then. But for the most part, Thor isn't really someone who explores the vast cosmic spaces.
Now, my other question about this is, since this movie's been well received by pretty much all accounts, it's performed fairly well enough to deserve to, earn a sequel. Do you think this is merely rewarding Marvel's mentality that they seem to be going into? If not with this movie, then for sure with Ant-Man. We're Marvel, and fuck you, you're going to watch our movies because we're Marvel. Do you think it's just going to reward that and encourage more of that?
I definitely think so. Again, I'm not looking forward to Ant-Man, and judging from the way that film has shaped up on the production end of things, I'm not expecting Ant-Man to pleasantly surprise me. I suspect it will be what it's shaping up to be, which is Paul Rudd, a tiny Paul Rudd, riding an ant around New York, making perhaps wisecracks every now and then. And that is just not appealing to me. I think Marvel has earned enough good grace that people will see Ant-Man. They're put together a kick-ass trailer for Ant-Man. People will go see it. But I don't think Marvel is invulnerable. We've seen this, Cloverfield is a prime example. Cloverfield got a lot of hype going in. And then you look at the opening weekend for Cloverfield, and it's fantastic, and it made its money back on its weekend alone. But you think, well, why hasn't Cloverfield had a sequel yet if it was so successful? And that's because while it made a lot of money, the returns drop off something like 80%. Like 80% of the movie-going audience dropped Cloverfield like a hot potato after the first week because it sucked.
Yeah.
So I think Marvel has garnered enough goodwill that something like Ant-Man will probably get people in the theaters the opening weekend, and people will definitely see it just because it's Marvel. But I don't think they're invulnerable, and I think if the movie sucks, then you're going to see that drop off. And I predict that's what's going to happen to Ant-Man unless it turns out that they actually made a good Ant-Man movie, but I'm convinced that's impossible. So.
Yeah, and I mean, we already have, well, I wouldn't really say so much a rumor. It's certainly not been confirmed, but a director, Neil Marshall, who's recently done, he directed the finale episode of the last season of Game of Thrones. He's done some directing for a Star's original series, Black Sails, and he also directed the pilot for the NBC TV series based on Constantine, which I've seen, and we'll go into that later. But yeah, he has said that he wants to do a Black Widow movie. Now, here's my thoughts on this. The appeal to seeing one is, of course, the obvious. But then again, I can Google a few things and get the same relief online anyways. Sex appeal not being a factor, is there any reason why we would want to see this?
No, I mean, like, again, we touched on this before, but you look at the Avengers team from the original Avengers film, and you got guy who, when he loses his shit, turns into an unstoppable rage monster.
Yeah.
You've got genius in super advanced power armor. You've got a super soldier who's the peak of human potential. And then you've got, like, the God of Thunder. And you're like, that's a pretty good team. And then you've got S.H.I.E.L.D. agents Black Widow and Hawkeye, and you're like, oh, I'm a really good assassin, and this guy's really proficient with a form of weaponry that hasn't been relevant since the Middle Ages. And you kind of go, why are you guys here? The fact is that Black Widow and Hawkeye are supporting characters to the rest of the Avengers, and that's never going to change. And yeah, guess what? Marvel canceled their ongoing Hawkeye comic book series because no one gave a shit about Hawkeye, and no one was going to buy a comic book just to read about Hawkeye. So, Black Widow, of course, she's got her, like you said, there are obvious reasons, but honestly, those reasons just mean justifying keeping her in the Avengers films and having her show up in Captain America's films. There's really not a lot to Black Widow or Hawkeye, for that matter, to really justify a full movie. And, I mean, honestly, if you're going to make a Black Widow movie, sex appeal aside, you'd basically just be making a kind of lackluster, generic spy movie. Honestly.
Yeah, and really, I mean, I don't think that's what, I mean, yes, there is a market for spy movies, of course, but I don't really think it's Marvel audience. And again, once you take that aside, and if you just have Black Widow on her own, if the movie were made, if it went anywhere, if it had a chance of going anywhere, I mean, they'd have to throw in cameos. They'd have to have a Thor or a Captain America cameo, probably Captain America. Have to have someone else in there to kind of lend it some weight, because I really don't see a lot of people caring.
Yeah, Black Widow and Hawkeye were definitely two of the, Avengers, if you want to call them Avengers, who nobody cared about. And I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. I think, and again, yeah, I mean, okay, I like Marvel superhero movies. I also like James Bond movies. But here's the thing, I don't go to a James Bond movie expecting to see a superhero movie, and I don't go to a Marvel movie expecting to see a spy movie. Right.
And I guess I didn't really phrase it very well, but that's more or less what I meant. I mean, it's like there's really not that overlap there between the whole spy movie thing and Marvel. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not, that's not what they really do. It's not what you think about. It just seems like to me that if this movie were to be made, if it had a chance to be successful, they'd have to throw in cameos, they'd have to throw in other characters. At which point, really, what is the reasoning behind even making it? Now, I know this guy, Neil Marshall. He's evidently got a good track record with that, adapting comic book content, whatever, to screen format. And I'm not saying the man's not talented, but I just don't think. I mean, this isn't an untried property in the sense of, okay, well, no one really knew who Guardians of the Galaxy was. No one really knows all that much about Ant-Man. So, I mean, these are two relatively unknown things that people will be like, okay, hey, we'll give it a shot. It's Marvel. I mean, this is Black Widow. We know her. We've seen her. We know what she's about. We know what her shtick is. She does spy stuff while being, sexy. I mean, the character's well done, As I said a few weeks ago, she's a good example of how to, have a good female character without overly sexualizing to a ridiculous degree. But we know who she is. We know what she's about. And most people, I think at least, are going to be like, okay, yeah, not so much. Sorry, just really not interested.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And yeah, the same kind of goes for Hawkeye. I don't see a Hawkeye movie ever really happening. Of course, the thing is that, Hawkeye doesn't have boobs, so that's why no one's talking about a Hawkeye movie.
No, but evidently there is a rumor that Hawkeye will be in Captain America 3.
Again, that makes sense. I have no problem with Hawkeye and Black Widow showing up as support in, the real Avengers movies. But,
right, yeah, exactly.
I have no problem with them showing up to help from time to time, but neither of them, I think, have enough interest or, honestly, story behind them to carry a film on their own. So, there's that. Yeah. You mentioned Constantine. We'll get to that in a minute, but before we get to that, I want to talk about another premiere that occurred this past Saturday. And that was the debut of Season 8 of the new Doctor Who show, Peter Capaldi's first outing as the Doctor. And so everyone was interested in seeing how this would go. We talked a bit about it last week, but now that I've actually seen the episode, I can kind of give my thoughts on a few things here or there. And so I guess my first impression was, I can't wait to see Peter Capaldi's first episode where he gets to play the Doctor for the whole episode.
So now, what do you mean by the whole episode? Did they have, Matt Smith in half of it, or what?
No. Matt Smith makes a brief cameo, and I'll get to that in a moment. But no, Peter Capaldi is the Doctor right from the start. The problem is that it picks up almost immediately where, the last episode ended, the time of the Doctor. So he's regenerated. He's freshly regenerated.
Right.
And the thing you have to understand about the Doctor is that unless you're on certain planets where Time Lord science is quote-unquote elevated and perfected, regeneration is kind of a haphazard affair, and it leaves the Doctor disoriented for a while before he kind of gets his head on straight, because he's basically a new person, and there's a lot of, I don't want to say trauma, but there's a lot of confusion that kind of goes along with that. And in this, that's borne out in the past when the Fourth Doctor gave way to the Fifth Doctor. The Fifth Doctor had to basically spend the whole episode kind of basically recovering, or else he would have died, because the Fourth Doctor had been so long-lived that when he regenerated into the Fifth Doctor, it was a huge shock to his system. Then there was the Fifth to the Sixth, where the Sixth Doctor just had wild personality swings because, again, he's freshly regenerated, and his new personality was just kind of getting out for the first time, for lack of a better term, so he was all over the place then. Seventh Doctor didn't really have much of a... Well, the Seventh Doctor started off as an absolute imbecile and then kind of got his head on straight, so maybe he just had the stupids when he woke up. Going on from that, when the Seventh regenerated into the Eighth, Paul McGann, who played the Eighth Doctor in the 1996 movie, spent the first half of that movie in a haze where he had amnesia. He literally couldn't remember who he was. We never saw... Now again, the Eighth Doctor regenerating into the War Doctor, that didn't cause any problems because that was on a place where Time Lord science had been elevated, so it was a perfect regeneration. He had no hangover, so to say.
Right.
We never really saw the fallout. We saw the War Doctor regenerate into the Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, at the end of the 50th anniversary special, but we only saw the regeneration and we didn't see the aftermath, so we're not sure how he dealt with it. And by the time we see Eccleston at the start of the first season of the new series, he'd
already become accustomed to it.
Exactly. When the Ninth Doctor regenerated into the 10th Doctor, David Tennant's Doctor, he spent the first episode he was in, most of it in bed, just sleeping it off. And when the 10th Doctor regenerated into the 11th Doctor, that being Matt Smith's Doctor, the personality shift didn't seem to affect him as much, but he did spend the first 15 or so minutes of his first episode asking for like all these different foods, eating it for a few seconds and then going, bah, this is terrible. Then he'd ask for something else to go, oh, this is pretty good. Bah, it's terrible. So again, it's a case of his personality kind of becoming adjusted. And so again, we have it again where Peter Capaldi, his 12th Doctor, he goes on this huge frantic rant when we first see him, and it's clear that he's not of sound mind. And then he passes out, and then they kind of get him rested up, but then he wakes up, and then he kind of, he has this scene where he stumbles about in Victorian London, as they're in Victorian London. And, he kind of has the scene where he starts accosting this homeless man in an alley.
It happens.
And you kind of feel bad for the homeless guy, because the doctor's like, what do you think of my face? And he's like, I think it's perfectly fine. May I leave now? And he's like, I don't know. Look at myself in the mirror. And so, again, by the time he meets up, and I'm kind of going to gloss over major parts of the plot. I don't want to get bogged down in the minutia, but I will say to anyone who has seen it or is going to see it, by the time the Doctor and Clara meet back up at the restaurant, he's more or less got his head on straight. And from that point on, you kind of get a feel for what Capaldi's Doctor is going to be. But it's one of those cases where I went in really excited to see what Capaldi would be as the Doctor. And for the first half of the episode, it was kind of a cock tease because he's out of his mind. And again, I'm not blaming the episode or anything for that, because I should have adjusted I should have been aware of that. Knowing the history of the show, the Doctor's first episode in a new body, he's going to be a bit wonky.
Right.
But I will say that from the midpoint of the episode to the end, I really liked what I saw from Capaldi as the Doctor, and I'm really excited to see where they go from there. You know, I'm excited to see when he's fully in the swing of things, what he's going to be like. So I'm psyched. I liked what I saw. It's definitely a darker Doctor. And like I said, Matt Smith does make a cameo. So basically, the way that they explain it, and what the best part about this episode is the dynamic between the Doctor and Clara. Now, Clara has a bit of a problem adjusting to the Doctor's new body, because she's like, well, they call it regeneration, but he's older. He doesn't seem all that regenerated. And so,
right. He's not hot anymore.
Basically, they actually do a really good job addressing that. And it's what you asked me yesterday, like how many people are going to be turned off by the fact
Translation, fuck off Americans.
They address that. What they do, basically Clara is, she actually kind of gets over it rather quickly, and she comes to accept, it's a bit tenuous at first, but basically the way it's explained by one of the Doctor's other companions, the lizard woman living in Victorian England as a detective. Her name just escapes me at the moment. God, it starts with a V. It'll come back to me. Anyway, point being, she's known the Doctor for a long time, and she basically tells Clara, look, you met the Doctor, and he looked young. But you didn't actually think he was young, did you? Like, he's hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Right.
I mean, like, when we first see the Doctor, the very first episode of Doctor Who, he's actually traveling with his granddaughter from Gallifrey. So, the Doctor's old enough to to actually be a grandfather in Time Lord terms, and they live for fucking ever. So the Doctor is already an old guy.
Yeah, he's old even by their standards, so.
Yeah. And I kind of liked what they had when they had John Hurt as the War Doctor, and he sees Matt Smith and David Tennant as the 10th and 11th Doctors, and at first he thinks they're the Doctor's companions. And they're like, well, actually, we're you. And he's like, do I have a midlife crisis? I thought that was good. But the way that they explain it was that the Doctor, for his 10th and 11th incarnations, was sort of, those being the Tennant and Smith years, that he was more or less looking for acceptance. And while a Time Lord can't really choose what their incarnation is, what their regeneration is going to be, there's a lot of evidence to support that on a subconscious level, it does affect.
Right.
It does affect what they want, and so it's possible that the Doctor, when he regenerated into Tennant and then into Smith, was perhaps looking to try to recapture some sort of youthful flair. And it's kind of played with that by basically the Doctor, it's explained to Clara that when the Doctor regenerated into his current incarnation, he trusted her, he took the veil down, so to say. And he's like, this regeneration will show you closer to who I am. And it was actually a really good thing because throughout the episode, people are kind of giving Clara a hard time, thinking like, oh, you're just pissed off that you can't flirt with him anymore. And she keeps denying it, but it's always something that's sort of played with. And then by the end, when you see Peter Capaldi's Doctor, he's there with Clara, and he goes, Clara, I'm not your boyfriend. And she goes, I never thought you were. And the Doctor responds, I never said it was your mistake. Basically
and
implying...
then, creepy old people sex, right? Right?
No.
Oh.
Basically implying that the Doctor, was perhaps insecure in the fact that he looked young and was traveling with this, attractive young lady. He likes the idea of people thinking that she was his girlfriend, and he kind of liked that. So,
right.
And so now it's kind of like, maybe it's the experience of the War Doctor. Maybe, the 11th incarnation kind of getting to interact with a earlier version of himself who was acting closer to the age that he is, kind of convinced him that, maybe it's time to start, acting your age again, for lack of a better term. And then that was what spurred this regeneration on, this regeneration in this form at least. And so I thought that was a really good way to handle that. It is sort of saying, look, this whole thing with Tennant and Smith has been fun. And there have been good episodes of both of them. They've both done good jobs in the role, but, we're getting back to what the Doctor should be. And I liked that, in that once midway through the episode, once Capaldi was able to really kind of get into the role and be his Doctor, it got really cool. He's a much darker take on the character. I don't want to again, spoilers, I guess. It's not something that's answered, but there's a good, and I suspect this will be a question that they're going to keep lingering until at least the end of the season. But it's heavily implied that the Doctor might have killed someone when he didn't have to. Which, again, for the longest time, the Doctor has been someone who has resisted violence if he can help it. And in this episode, it's kind of, again, they very intentionally leave it vague. But the implication is that the Doctor, that this Doctor is not afraid to kill someone.
He will cut you!
And again, that's not entirely out of character. People were saying, oh, the Doctor wouldn't do that. Again, the Doctor as a whole is a complicated...
Well, I mean, the Doctor evidently nuked his planet.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he ain't afraid to cut a bitch.
The War Doctor did what was necessary and burnt Gallifrey. And then, of course, the 50th anniversary, they kind of go back and find a way around it. But the fact of the matter was, originally, when given the chance, he did nuke his home planet. That was the War Doctor. The Ninth Doctor, who emerged from the aftermath of that, Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, was a hardened Doctor. He carried around a giant laser gun in one episode shooting Daleks. And again, you could say, oh, they're the Daleks, that's different. But again, the Ninth Doctor, fresh from dealing with the trauma of the Time War, was not afraid to kill a sentient life form if he felt he needed to. And I'd even go back further than that. The Seventh Doctor, Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, was not afraid to, he really wasn't a physical kind of guy, but he would manipulate people into basically sewing their own ends and deaths. Making their own beds, as it were. Very much a manipulator type of character. The Sixth Doctor was never afraid to get physical, and the Third Doctor was never afraid to get physical. So, again, the Doctor is a complicated individual, and each regeneration emphasizes different aspects of his personality. And, the willingness to take a life is something that the Doctor is capable of. And it just hasn't been an aspect of his personality that's been emphasized in either his 10th or 11th incarnations. But we're into his 12th now. Well, technically 13th, because there's John Hurt in there.
You gotta reset.
So basically the personality of this new Doctor, it's still the same guy, you understand, but he's got different aspects of his personality are now going to be emphasized, and it's entirely possible that the Doctor killed the antagonist of this episode. So, again, I think it's when you watch enough Stephen Moffat, who's been writing Doctor Who since the start of season 5, and who's been writing Sherlock, which is another great series. You watch enough of him, you sort of kind of pick up on his writing, on his habits as a writer. And so I'm getting the feeling that this whole question of did the Doctor kill that guy is going to be a lingering question. I don't know what the end reveal is going to be, and after only one episode, I don't feel I have enough information to make an educated guess. I don't know if the Doctor killed him or not. I don't. But I'm saying the possibility's there, and if it turns out that he did, I'm not going to call betrayal or anything, because it's entirely keeping with the complex individual that the Doctor is. All in all, I liked it. I was a bit frustrated, just kind of the long tease before we actually got to see Capaldi inhabit the role. But again, that's more on me than the actual episode. I should have remembered that fresh regenerations are always a bit on the broken side of things for a while. I will say, Jack, you should be happy to know that the second episode of season 8 will be Dalek-centered.
Oh, joy.
But I say that because the current arrangement with Terry Nation says they have to use the Daleks once a season, so maybe they're getting their once-a-year commitment out of the way, and then we could be Dalek-free going on.
We'll see. But now on to the actual important things.
Mm-hmm.
The T-Rex running through London, right?
Yeah, it's Victorian London, actually. Yes.
That makes it even better. Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
It's an interesting development. The T-Rex is handled not as you'd expect. That's all I'm going to say on the subject. If you haven't,
Phil Tippett strikes again.
Phil Tippett. There was a T-Rex in London, Phil.
In Victorian fucking London. How do you even do that, Phil?
There are raptors in the kitchen, Phil. The goddamn kitchen. So yeah, I liked it, and it ended on a twist. It ended on an interesting twist with basically the villain of the episode keeps ranting about how he wants to get to the Promised Land, and then he dies, and we're not sure if he jumped or if the Doctor pushed him. But at the end of the episode, the villain wakes up in like this nice, perfect little like English garden, and there's this woman sitting at like a table, and she's like, "Oh, you've got here," and he's like, "You finally arrived," and he's like, "Where am I?" And she goes, "Oh, this is the Promised Land. Welcome to heaven." And then it ends. So, a lot of teasing right off the bat from Stephen Moffat. I'm sure to be very interesting to see where they go from here. I'm excited because the Doctor, when it comes to concepts such as religion, which the whole Promised Land talk and the heaven thing at the end kind of alluded to, the Doctor and religion have always kind of had an interesting relationship, and it's not one that you'd probably typically expect from a sci-fi show, which sci-fi shows tend to preach their agnosticism. This one, it's kind of more give and take, and it's always been really interesting to see. And I'm looking forward to see how they handle this whole heaven theme, if that is in fact going to be a theme running throughout this season at least, as I think it's going to be. But a lot of unanswered questions, which is just the way Stephen Moffat likes it. So I liked it. Can't wait to see Capaldi have a full episode to himself. And again, I kind of forgot to mention this in my whole spiel, but basically what happens is, as Clara is debating whether or not she wants to continue traveling with the Doctor, she gets a phone call, and it's from the Doctor played by Matt Smith in the past, because he can cull through time.
Of course.
Well, it's a Doctor. That's been established. He can do that. And he basically says, "Look, I'm going to regenerate soon. I know that regeneration's always tough, but, look, that's still me, and I'm going to need you a lot more, and I'm going to need you a lot more than you need me, so please don't give up on me." And so that was Matt Smith's brief cameo, as, returning as the 11th Doctor for a few minutes there. I didn't mind that at all. I thought all in all, I thought it was a good episode. It had a really cool way of dealing with the whole, what will fans think now that the Doctor's not a hot young guy anymore? And then they kind of just address that, and they address it very well, in my opinion. So, and it was Vastra. Vastra is the name of the lizard lady who solves crimes in Victorian London, who was letting Clara in on all this stuff.
Sounds like the name of like an adult lubricant.
It's actually rather interesting. She and her maid are actually cross-species lesbian crime solvers from Victorian London.
Well, I mean, yeah.
So,
duh.
And they showed up in Matt Smith's run, and they've been fun. They have their moments, but they've been a bit too overexposed as of late. And I kind of hope that this debut episode was the last that we see of them for a while. Not because I think they're bad characters per se. I just think that they've been a bit too overexposed, and I wouldn't mind putting them off to the side for a while we sort of let Capaldi flesh his view of the Doctor out a bit more for a season or two before revisiting them. But, that's just on me. I know a lot of other people disagree and think they're great. I don't have a problem with them, just want to see less of them for a while so I don't get too tired of them. But, yeah, those are my thoughts on Doctor Who Season 8 premiere. Moving on from that, we alluded to the first episode of NBC's Constantine. You've seen that, Jack, and I guess I know that you're a fan of the Keanu Reeves Constantine movie.
Yeah, I am. It actually is one of my favorites. I mean, Keanu Reeves...
That should be a bad movie, Public Defender, by the way, because most people hate that thing. Really? Yeah.
Why?
Well, we'll get into that when you have to defend it. But, point being...
I never said... Well, anyways. I mean, okay, Keanu Reeves, on the whole, is not a good actor. Mm-hmm. And... I like that because I think it made good use of him. I mean, he doesn't really have to... All he has to do is just kind of be an asshole. And that's a really easy thing for him to do, I think. It should be easy for anyone to do, to be honest with you. But I like the movie. But anyways, so yeah, I'd found out a few months ago that NBC was, doing a TV series of it. So far, only the pilot has been up. I don't recall when it actually came on. I just watched it today on the DVR. I just seen it like, oh, hey, yeah, I need to do that because every now and then I go back and catch up on shit. And anyways, I've been doing that this weekend. Well, today's Tuesday. Well, weekend for me. Anyways. So, I watched it and, actually, I think good things about it. They have a different take on the character. Now, I know this was a DC comic. No one beat me up about it. I have not read. I'm not even familiar with, how true the movie and this series is to the comic. I really could not even begin to tell you.
Me neither. I know Constantine is a comic series, but I've never actually read it.
Right, yeah, and I just really dig, the whole exorcism shtick and the idea of this kind of rogue guy who does it as opposed to, your more priestly individuals. It's kind of an interesting take. And it's an idea that even, the very popular, successful series Supernatural, it really riffed on, and kind of borrowed and made their own in some ways and just blatantly ripped off in others. For example, this angel in Supernatural, Castiel, he wears Constantine's trench coat. That's why he wears it. Is a reference to Constantine. So I mean, it's something that's kind of coming into its own as an idea, and it's almost becoming a trope on its own. But I watched the show. I like it. It's they have this character has, because they actually have someone that can act. He has a bit more depth to the character than, Keanu Reeves' interpretation was. For example, in the movie, Constantine, of course, is pretty much condemned to hell. In the movie, it was because, he tried to kill himself. And they never really go too much into why. It's just established, okay, well, that's what he did, and here he is. In this pilot for this series, they actually go into it with a fair degree of depth, and the actor, I don't know his name, British gentleman, actually gets to, act. And, it shows because they actually have an actor who can, show more than one emotion. The character has more than one emotion. He's still a snarky asshole, which is cool. That's kind of what you need. They, not quite as irreverent as the movie was. So I could have sworn Constantine told some guy to fuck off. Which, this is U.S. network television primetime here. So, I'm pretty sure that's what was said. I even rewound it, and I'm pretty sure that's what he said. So that's kind of like, whoa, someone owed the FCC a few bucks on that one. But, it's high time we get over that shit anyways. So basically the movie starts out where it shows Constantine in a mental asylum. He's there because basically he had something really bad happen. He fucked up. He got a little girl condemned to hell.
Oh, wow.
And
that's what we call an oopsie in the exorcism business.
Yeah, that is definitely a my bad moment. Very awkward. So yeah, he got this little girl. Not only was she condemned to hell, she was evidently torn apart before doing so. So very awkward moment, career speaking, a very low point in one's career if you're an exorcist. But he's in a mental asylum. He checked himself in because he's basically hoping, thinking, they can do something, hypnosis, shocking his fucking brain, whatever, to make him forget this shit. And he comes across an inmate, whatever, another patient who is possessed. And he's like, God damn it, I'm not going to get away from this, so may as well just stop bothering. And so then he checks himself out again, and that's kind of where it picks up. It goes on from there. From some point, he goes from being, I guess, in a mental institution in Britain to being in Atlanta, Georgia.
Well, we can't afford to film the whole show in Britain. We got to get him stateside somehow.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, I imagine London probably charges a lot more than Atlanta. I don't know. But so yeah, there he is, and he comes across this, chick who evidently he knew her father, and he hands her this pendant that allows her to see the spirit world, and then she starts seeing all the, crazy weird shit, such as her grandmother vomiting ink all over her mother's head, and all this other cool stuff that she had not been privy to before.
That was an awkward Christmas.
I know, right? You always tell Grandma, don't drink the ink. This is for writing, and the fact that you insist on having an ink bowl sitting around anyways is just bloody bizarre. Why do you have to drink it?
It's 2014, Grandma.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's alluded to now that, Constantine's soul, it's stated that his soul is now condemned to hell because he fucked up and got this girl sent to hell, basically. And there's this angel who, in kind of keeping with the movie, the angels are a little bit kind of assholes too, as they also tend to be sometimes.
Which angel
in
is it, out of curiosity?
He just referred to himself as Mal, which made me actually think of Malthael from Diablo 3. Made me wonder if he's supposed to be like the angel of death or something. But I don't know.
I just know from the movie he dealt with Gabriel, and I was just wondering.
It was not Gabriel.
Oh, okay.
No, it was not Gabriel. It was, he just called himself Mal. So, that was about it. And, he says, we need your help. We decided, we're going to be more proactive. We were told to come down here and just, guide and nurture with soft little whispers and things like that. And we want to be proactive.
God's got this reorg going in heaven,
No,
new strategies.
Actually, it's not God. God has nothing to do with it.
Oh,
and
who is it?
Or at least it's alluded to that God has nothing to do with this, because Constantine replies to him like, "Whoa, you might want to slow your roll there, guy, because that's how Lucifer got started." Mm-hmm. And the angel's like, yeah, whatever. You're one to talk. You're going to hell anyways. So that's kind of where it starts off at, with this angel being quote unquote assigned to quote unquote watch over Constantine. And later on it slowly becomes apparent and revealed that he's actually there to get Constantine to help them find out what the other side is planning on doing.
That being
because
El Diablo?
Yeah, basically.
Does Lucifer actually show up?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure he will at some point in the series, but I would imagine at some point.
Because I thought it was in the movie. I thought it was, I still laugh out loud when I hear this. When Lucifer shows up and Constantine just goes, "Hey, I don't know why. He's just like, and so.
My favorite part of that movie was where Constantine's being sucked up into heaven.
And he flicks the devil off?
Yes! Like, that would so be me. Oh my god, that's awesome. And really, honestly, that's my defense of that movie. Moments like that made that movie for me, and people can trash talk it all they want. I loved it.
It would have only been better as if as he was going up into heaven, flipping off the devil, he was like, "Loser."
Yeah. Loser. But yeah, so they didn't do a 2-hour premiere for this show, which is kind of sad because I really liked what I'd seen. kind of left me, wanting to see a bit more. Hopefully they'll, continue on with it. I mean, they advertised it quite a bit, said this was going to be a thing. So I'm imagining more episodes will be forthcoming. But it pretty much ends off with, him saving this girl and her realizing that she has these powers that she inherited from her father. And she's like, oh my God, I've got to use this to help people. And it ends with Constantine talking to this angel, and the angel basically says something like, oh, well, why couldn't you have just told her that she had to do this instead of just, doing it the way you did and causing someone to die for her to learn that she was actually right, because she'd predicted earlier on in the show that, oh, well, there's going to be something happening here, and then later on she sees it and whatever. And Constantine's just like, well, she had to think it was her idea. And that was more or less what it left off with, was Constantine drinking beer in a bar, talking to an angel.
Huh.
And there you go. I liked it. Again, I'd like to see more of it. Now, I know Sci-Fi has kind of a similar thing they're doing. I think the name of the show is called Dominion. I have not watched it yet.
I've seen trailers for it.
Yeah, I do plan to catch it, because when I think quality entertainment, I think Sci-Fi Channel, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they have now. Until at least they can get me the sequel to Sharknado that they've been promising.
Sharknado 2's a thing. Yeah.
It is? It's out already?
Yeah.
Oh, I know what I'm doing later. Because if you've not seen Sharknado, you need this movie in your life.
You
really do.
I will probably end up seeing it eventually. I just I haven't reached that point where I've had a day so objectively boring that it's gotten to that point. Like, I can usually count on having to, floss my cat's teeth if I need excitement before I get to Sharknado.
You don't need it for excitement. Okay, you shouldn't be thinking I'm not bored enough. You should approach this from a standpoint of, do I need more awesome in my day? And the answer is invariably yes, because your life is about as exciting as mine. And therefore you should watch this movie a few times if necessary to let its lessons of life sink into you. Take notes if you have to. I mean, we can do an entire show on it if you would like, of the lessons that you learned from Sharknado. But yes, you should see it. So anyways, yeah, I do plan to check out Dominion when it airs. If it's aired already, I don't know. I'll have to check and see. Mm-hmm. I don't really watch TV per se. I record shit. If I missed it, I'll record reruns, whatever. And then once every 3 or 4 months, I'll sit down and I'll watch everything. I just now watched season 4 of Falling Skies. I'll watch it all in one go pretty much, because I hate waiting for a week. I hate that shit.
Oh yeah, no. It's actually funny. The new Battlestar Galactica series, it was actually recommended to me after the second season was over.
Yeah.
And that was just when I had was starting to go away for university. So, move to London, Ontario, get set up. Still got about a month or two before my first year of university starts. So what do? I go out. This was back when Blockbusters were still a viable business, and I rent the first 2 seasons of Battlestar Galactica, and I marathon them.
I remember. Yeah, I remember. I remember calling you one day, and you're like, I'm watching Battlestar Galactica. I'll call you back. 2 days later,
yeah,
my life has been changed. And you ragged on me for years, like, dude, you gotta watch this, I'm like, dude, I don't want to find out who the fucking Cylon is this week. That's boring. And you know me so well. You've known me for almost 10 fucking years. Mm-hmm. And you never used the words that would have got me to watch it. Nigga, they got a space aircraft carrier. Sign me up. Why am I not watching this right the fuck now?
When you finally got around to watching it, you're like, why didn't you tell me it was this awesome? I'm like, I said it was a good show. You didn't describe it properly.
Right. I mean, like, okay, I don't operate the way other people do with this shit. You need to tell me, like, give spoilers. I don't care about spoilers. If the thing is good enough, I'm going to like it anyways. If spoilers ruin something, then it wasn't that damn good to begin with. And so, I mean, you should have told me. You failed me. You failed me as a friend. You failed me. Think about what you've done while watching fucking Sharknado.
But kind of just getting back to that, you know, I marathoned the first 2 seasons of Battlestar Galactica, and then I'm like, okay, gotta wait for the 3rd season. So 3rd season starts, watch the first episode, 3rd season, that was awesome, and then I realized I had to wait a full week. And
yeah,
that's why I kind of prefer, and again, it's the same thing happened with Doctor Who. As soon as that episode was over, I was like, I want to see the next episode, but I've got to wait a week. So, in Game of Thrones, I almost am of the mind to just, for the next season,
never watch it again until the series is done.
I'm going to try an experiment. I'm going to see if I can not watch Game of Thrones at all during the 5th season.
I tried.
I'm going to go start to finish. I'm not going to watch a single episode. And then when it's done, I'm gonna get the full season, and I'm gonna watch it. I'm just gonna marathon it from start to finish, because the way a lot of these shows are being made right now, how good they are, it's like fuck waiting. It's kind of like Netflix has the right idea. The problem is that Canadian Netflix is stupid and trying to get anything of value from Netflix up here is just exercise in madness. But
I don't know, man. Okay, here, like, y'all have a lot of weird shit with TV availability. I don't think it's these networks, because it's too many instances. It might be y'all's government just being stupid.
I do know that there is a government agency that has overview over Canadian television, Canadian radio, and whatnot. And they have been accused of being a bit too draconian. The fear being that, you know, we can't just let the Americans broadcast whatever they want up here, or else society will crumble. But
you'll have, you know, smallpox and the gayness running rampant in the streets of Canada.
So, you know,
my God, there may even be ethnics doing things that we don't know about. Say the South gets a bad rap.
So, you know, the Canadian government can be very heavy-handed when it comes to what sort of thing is able to be broadcast in Canada, be it via the internet or be it on cable or broadcast television. That could be something to it too. But, you know, and then it's people like me.
Mr. Harper, tear down this wall.
And then so here I am. I'm the one who has to suffer because, you know, the Canadian equivalent of the Ad Council got all high and mighty all of a sudden. And, you know, I've got to sit here and suffer, and I've got to, you know, get my illegal stream of House of Cards, because...
At which point they promptly recommend Power Rangers Wild Force for whatever reason.
Yeah, that was good. You like Power. You search for House of Cards. You might also like Power Rangers Wild Force. What?
But yeah, in terms of Constantine itself, I mean, I know I haven't really said a whole lot because usually with things like that, I can't really watch a first episode of something and say all that much about it. I like the way the main character is portrayed. I like the actor that he got. He's pretty cool. Almost reminds me kind of like a British Dennis Leary, if that makes any sense. I know that sounds incomprehensible, but
he he does kind of look like it.
And kind of the way he acts a little bit too. He pulls off the character great. Good performance. I thought the writing was fairly sound, fairly competent. If you like shows like Supernatural and, you know, shit like that, you like exorcism movies, stuff like that, and you don't mind a bit of comedy in your horror, you know, check it out. I'd say it's, you know, worth a watch. Though speaking of exorcism, and I wanted to say this for last, because this is pretty fucking lulzy. Okay, so we talked about Constantine, and in doing so, I referenced a few of the other shows that have been out, and about that, most notably, of course, Supernatural, and the whole zombie vampire demon thing has really come into its own the last few years, like super mainstream, almost to the point of nauseating redundancy.
Okay, you know what? All y'all going on about Supernatural, you're casuals, X-Files where it's at.
Oh yeah, X-Files. I mean, well, I don't think any of this would have ever happened without the X-Files. But I mean,
worship David Duchovny as the trailblazer he is.
I mean, you and I could do fucking probably an entire show, if not half a show, on the fucking X-Files. But that's why I'm not going to go any further into that, because we'll be here all night.
I just like calling people casuals.
Shut up, casual. Anyways. So yeah, like I said, this is reaching a point of almost nauseating redundancy. And nothing to me says nauseating like Lifetime television. And evidently they want in on this. Like, okay, you go back and you think of, exorcism movies, demon movies, things like that. And there's usually two that stand out in people's mind. At least, if you're of a certain age, which I am. Mm-hmm. And that is, The Exorcist and The Omen. Mm-hmm. They're making a TV show based off of The Omen called Damien. Brief synopsis of the movie. The Omen is about a, fairly well-to-do couple who have a child, that they find out is the Antichrist. And, they went on to make some
Satan's.
To Satan's. They went on to make a few sequels, kind of like in line with very much a parallel to how the Jaws series went.
Everyone just sort of
progressively gets worse, yes, except Jaws the Revenge, which was a brilliant cinematic masterpiece.
The one that, Michael Caine only agreed to do so you get a free trip to the Bahamas?
Yes. Yes. And also starring Mario Van Peebles back when his career was almost flirting with relevance.
With the name Van Peebles, you could really only go so far.
And he did. He did. Oh, God. He flew towards the picture of the sun on the ceiling and got too close. But yeah, so anyways, the Omen sequels were kind of bad. They made one in I don't know how many I think 4 or 5. The last one I actually actively watched was The Omen 3. It was made in the early 80s. It actually starred Sam Neill as an adult Damien, trying to be all Antichristy. A very underwhelming movie. Very underwhelming.
The Antichrist is a key figure in the Book of Revelations. In the Book of Revelations, some pretty hardcore stuff goes down, and if you can't realize that in your movie, you probably shouldn't go there.
And they didn't. I mean, it really got the Iron Man 3 treatment. I mean, like, he did the closest to being Antichristy. I mean, it was obvious that he was the son of the devil. He was all aligned with the darkness and the whatnot. But really, about the only thing he did was be the head of a corporation or some shit. Evil entrepreneur creating jobs, Satan. And so, big fucking downer. So anyways, yeah, the Lifetime Network, is picking up Damien, this TV series based on The Omen. Oh my God. I want to watch this. I want to see what kind of vapid asshole of a train wreck this is, because I'm sorry. And this isn't me woman bashing or anything like this. This is me Lifetime bashing. They claim to be television for women. Okay, maybe if you're like my ex-wife who want to sit on your ass eating bonbons while yelling at the kids all day as 10,000 cats surround you. Maybe those kinds of people. But that's not, specific to gender.
Yes.
And Family Guy said it best. Lifetime. Television for idiots. I want to see what they do with this. I really do. Because I just want to see, I bet you, well, no, because they're still using the name Damien. I was going to say Damianetta. No, because they'll have him, it's a guy who's being evil. He's probably going to just rape a bunch of people or something. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to watch it just for shiggles. see what they can do to this. Notice I didn't say with. Yeah, I read about that today. I'm just like, oh my god, this is great. This is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's goddamn Lifetime. Seeing what they do.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know what they've ever done that was like relevant, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, they've never had a TV show that kind of put them on the map the way like, you know, oh god, Walking Dead did with AMC, or, you know, Game of Thrones has really done for HBO, or I guess before Game of Thrones, The Sopranos, but I couldn't be arsed. Godfather sucked, by the way. So, you know, there's my thoughts on that, and that's just something that I got a good chuckle out of.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, unless there's someone new in charge of a Lifetime network who's like, we're pulling a weighty.
From what I understand, I've heard lately that they actually are trying to, you know, get in on the really good TV show bandwagon, and they got some kind of damn show out. I don't recall what it was. I was just kind of like sitting there like, okay, that's cool. You know,
it's not going to be Lifetime anymore. It's going to be LT 2.0.
Oh my god. You know, if one of our listeners works for them, they're like, oh my god, Harv, I had my 2-year-old draw this up on paint last night. What do you think?
You know,
you
after
can have it for $3 million.
After
updated ass logo.
You know what? After, you know, sci-fi became Siffy, I wouldn't put it past him.
And again, I know I've made this joke before, but I never get tired of making it. Whenever I don't have the Sci-Fi Network, I am Siffy-less. Oh, though I do want to give a bit of an update and get a little bit of viewer feedback, listener feedback, on Bags versus the Flat Earth Society. Yeah. Basically, it's kind of a follow-up to anyone that listened to the bonus content we did a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
You know, they've eaten my trolling up, hook, line, and sinker, and I'm kind of at a loss because I really didn't expect them to be this stupid. So I'm kind of thinking, you know, kind of a drawn-out thing, then with a huge shebang at the end. I have my own idea for a finale of it, which you know what that is, Mike, the Brony forum treatment.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to get a little bit of, you know, listener feedback. What would you, okay, to anyone who hasn't listened to the bonus content, I'll, you know, brief it here. Basically, me and Mike and our friends, Steve and Oz, from Nation States, got shit-faced one night, and we stumbled upon a forum for the Flat Earth Society. They are exactly what the name would imply. They are people that actually legitimately think that the fucking Earth is flat. That's all there is to it. It really is that simple. And I made a post on there saying, you know, I'm a new believer and blah, blah, blah. I worded all such to where they believe it. There was sarcasm and there was clearly a parody post, but they believed it. Mm-hmm. So now I'm like, okay, what would be a good coup de grace to this? So if anyone has any ideas about, you know, some fun ways to stick it to the flat earthers that do not involve anything illegal, post it. Mm-hmm. Or contact us somehow. Indeed.
And, you know, hopefully, I don't want it to become too regular, but, you know, some Bags bonus content here and there. We'll try to remember to actually record some of these happenings as they happen going forward.
Yeah, we never get tired of trolling people.
But, on that note, we're gonna bring episode 29 to an end. You can catch us, you know, all the usual places at basicallysportshow.com. You can find us on YouTube, on iTunes, on Stitcher, Spreaker. Of course, you can find us at the sportslogos.net forum in the lounge section under the Basically a Sports Show thread. You can find us at forums.taija2.org, and you can find us at under the Transformers video section at TFW 2005.
Or wherever fine feminine hygiene products are sold.
So, yeah, as always, this is Mike, for Jack, signing off.
I am so ripped right now.